Hello, my name is Lauren Sharma, and I'm here to talk about my literacy beliefs. So to start with, I want to talk about the Balanced Literacy Framework, which was the basis of this entire course, working with different elements of that. It's a concept I was not familiar with before, but since learning about it, it's really expanded my knowledge and understanding of what effective literacy instruction consists of. So it does offer a blending of both whole language and phonics instruction, which is wonderful because I personally believe that using just one of those approaches is not effective by itself. I do think that they work really well together, and I like how the Balanced Literacy Framework utilizes that. So, whole language instruction that deals with recognizing sight words, making connections between text and illustrations, understanding the role of words in context, becoming a more fluent reader, recognizing words more quickly, things like that, as well as using words to express meaning through writing. Phonics helps students decode unfamiliar words by making connections between letters and associated sounds, helps them write unfamiliar words by breaking down their phonological components, and also just makes reading and writing much easier by recognizing beginning and ending letters. So, like I said, Balanced Literacy Framework uses both phonics and whole language instruction. They work together throughout a variety of different reading and writing activities. I plan to use a wide variety of these activities every day in my classroom in order to help my students develop into confident readers and writers, as well as be able to use their skills to not only read with fluency, but comprehend and establish meaning through their reading. I want them to be able to relate experiences from their own lives to what they have learned, from reading, information they've pulled from that, and also be able to express these connections in classroom discussions. I'd also like for them to be able to formulate ideas and opinions based on their interpretations of text, make, inferences, state those, form conclusions from things that are happening in the text, as well as be able to express those concepts effectively in classroom discussions. And finally, I'd like them to be able to use their knowledge of known words, phonological components of words, what they know about syntax, punctuation, things like that, to express their ideas and opinions through their writing. So something else that I'd like to talk about that I've noticed through my research was that the Balanced Literacy Framework kind of follows a gradual release model. And basically what that involves is going from a teacher modeling instruction to creating shared experiences to help guide, and finally initiating independent processes. So in my opinion, in order to effectively utilize the Balanced Literacy Framework in my own classroom, I need to follow through with a few particular steps. One being that I model appropriate behaviors of good readers and writers. I can do this through activities like read alouds, as well as, some aspects of shared reading and writing on the parts where, I'm showing students what it means to be a good writer, what it means to be a good reader, different qualities there. Second of all, I need to create authentic experiences that allow students to participate in these various practices with me as they develop their own skills. This occurs through shared reading and writing, interactive writing, things where we're working together to reach a common understanding. So finally, to finally reach that final level of the gradual release. I want my students to be able to use these skills as independently as possible in order to become, more confident and successful readers and writers. Some aspects of guided reading and writing do allow for this, as well as independent reading and writing, naturally. So, there are a variety of different reading levels, and it's going to be my job to be able to determine what kind of reading level my students are at and to select appropriate texts for these reading levels. So we start with the early emergent readers. These students are just beginning to understand, concepts of print. They're starting to recognize letters. They're starting to be able to use, their phonological skills to blend together and decode words. So appropriate text should contain, lots of emphasis on illustrations, repeated vocabulary and sentence patterns. Repetition would really help, with them being able to grasp a concept early on. Small amounts of text. You don't want to overwhelm kids, and concepts, within the text that are easy to understand. So after this, we move on to the emergent readers, which these students, they've been at it for a little while. They have developed a deeper understanding of phonological awareness. They're able to recognize more sight words. Their comprehension abilities have improved because they are able to read more fluently and more easily. So, and they're also able to distinguish between fiction and nonfiction. Appropriate text there should contain more lines of print, more complex sentence structures. Don't need as much of an emphasis on illustrations, but it's still beneficial, and topics that are familiar but that we're able to cover more deeply. We've got two more levels. Next is the early fluent readers. And these are students that, reading has become a little more automatic for them. It's getting easier. Most of their time reading is now spent devoted to comprehending what they're reading. They're able to reach abilities to read more independently, and they're able to read and recognize various styles of genres. A text should contain, longer sentences with higher concentrations of words, more extensive vocabulary, more complicated sentence patterns, and a minimal usage of illustrations to support text. And finally, we move on to the fluent readers, which these students have transitioned from the process of learning to read to reading to learn. Now reading is helping them understand information within text. They're reading mostly independently at this stage. Inappropriate text should contain more text on each page, more variation of topics, and more descriptive and challenging vocabulary. So as an instructor, it's going to be my job to, pay close attention to where my students are at level-wise. Everyone's going to be on different levels. Unfortunately, we're not going to all be the same. And, I need to make sure that the texts I'm selecting are able to challenge students without causing them to be so challenged that they miss out on the comprehension aspect of their reading. So as our textbook states, reading is a process. A child's mind works as a processing system all the time as they're reading, which is so much more than just decoding phonological components of words. Reading actually involves simultaneous processes, which include, connecting letter recognition with spoken words, understanding words arranged in particular, sentence structure, accessing the meaning of words in the text, understanding them in context, focusing on the overall meaning of text, when you're finished or as you're progressing through the reading, as well as building off former understanding and idea processing about the ideas and information that are being communicated through the text. So, making connections from past experiences, things that they already know, things like that. So as children continue to become fluent readers, they do need to be able to carry out these processes on more and more challenging levels of text. And it's my job, and it will be my goal, to make sure that I'm helping my students continue to use these processes the way they should, through reading texts, through choosing texts that utilize their skills the best, and also asking good questions that promote higher level thinking, prompting in appropriate ways to, help them when they're stuck, and engage and assess where they're at with conceptualization. So moving on to the writing skills of students, children begin writing abilities by, just scribbling and creating shapes a lot of times that resemble letters, not actually forming true letters or words, but just kind of experimenting. As their skills develop, they will begin writing letters based on their knowledge, what they look like independently and in print. Usually starts with something like writing their name. As the concept of words develop, children will begin to understand the individual purpose of words within a sentence and can start to determine which letters to write to complete a word, or at least begin or end it. I've noticed this with my own student that I've been working with for this course. She's very good at knowing the beginnings and ends of words, but not so much the middle composition all the time. And then as far as one of the other stages is children, can begin to write full sentences, which includes punctuation. They understand what appropriate punctuation to use, when to use capital and lowercase letters, using phonological decoding to help them properly write words, things like that. So it'll be my job to recognize the fact that writing and reading are reciprocal with literacy, which means that they build off of each other, they work together, and I'm going to have to pay equal attention to both aspects as I'm teaching my students. So there are three main categories of instructional activities that we use in balanced literacy. They fall under the categories of reading, writing, and discussion. Reading includes read alouds, shared reading, guided and independent reading. Writing is shared and interactive writing, as well as guided and independent writing. And discussion is, just the ability for students to communicate what they understand, opinions they have, perspectives that they've made, and as well as test ideas, make inferences, predictions, things like that. And it also allows them to connect ideas to real life situations. These are all equally important parts of a balanced literacy education. So reading activities that we can look at, start with the read aloud. So essentially, teachers are reading the text aloud. They're modeling proper intonation, pausing, pronunciation, showing kids what a good reader sounds like, how to demonstrate that. And, with this in mind, things that I would like to try to do are I would like to choose texts that hold my students' interest. I want it to be relatable for them. It can be things about like family dynamics, activities that they might do out on recess, things about friendships, things that they can relate to where they're at in life. I feel like that'll, connect better with them. I also want to make sure to ask questions that build off of their comprehension of the text, and as well as challenge them to relate the concepts to their own lives. Finally, I want to model appropriate reading approaches so that my students can pick up on what good reading sounds like. Moving on to the shared reading activity. Now, this demonstrates both modeling and collaboration in the classroom. Basically, what's involved here is that the teacher reads text aloud at first and then has students read along during the second reading. Usually it occurs more than one time. The teacher will model a